Anybody who has the first question?
How do you feel that you did?
That's a great question. That's the first time that I've actually even met any of the candidates. So the opportunity to bounce ideas off of each other is kind of exciting, but I feel that I was able to represent my viewpoint, and I really wanted to highlight some of the differences between these candidates and myself, and I believe I did a good job doing that. I believe that I am the moderate in this race by a considerable margin. And I believe that District 4 is a moderate district. If you look at the polling, if you look at Ben McAdams being elected by 700 votes, I do not believe that District 4 is looking for a far-right Republican to represent them. And nor do I believe that it's healthy to send another person back to Washington whose primary tactic is going to be name-calling, labeling, and insults. I don't believe that's going to move anything in Washington forward.
There were a couple moments when the other candidates were a little bit confrontational, you and them. And I'm wondering if you feel that it's a moderate candidate that voters are really looking for there. Do you feel that you're leading in this race, and what evidence do you have that's the case?
Well, I 100% believe that District 4 is looking for a moderate. I think that the mere fact that they chose Ben McAdams last time instead of Mia Love shows you that this is not a hard right district. Now, our own internal polling suggests that we do very well with independents. In fact, if you look at members of my team, my communications director, I don't know if I should reveal this. She voted for Bernie Sanders last time. I've got people on my campaign who used to call themselves liberals, but because of my ability to articulate a conservative message and do it without the name calling, without the insults, most of them look at me, and even if they don't agree with me, they look at me and they say, you know, I never thought about it that way. And I think that that's how voters want to be treated. When two sides are just insulting each other, which side are you going to choose? The one with the better insults? I happen to believe, and I might be crazy, that there should be a significant difference between our kids on the playground and how they talk to each other and our representatives in legislative halls and how they talk to each other. And so that's what I think the members of District 4 are looking for, civility and respect. And I happen to believe that's the only thing that's going to move the ball forward and get Congress rolling again.
And if I could just follow up with that, we're seeing in the governor's race a push to get Democrats and unaffiliated voters to register as Republicans to vote. Is that something your campaign is encouraging? And what kind of reaction are you getting?
So members of my team brought up this idea of getting Democrats to register so that they could influence the vote. I told them I don't believe in gamesmanship. If you support me and you support me enough that it means you're going to change your affiliation to be a Republican, then come on board and I support you. But if you're doing it to game the system, I don't support that, and I told my team we will not be promoting that idea, and we have not promoted that idea.
There was a lot of back and forth about when restricting people's civil liberties is appropriate. You said if you're endangering people, then those should be curtailed. Can you give a few examples of when you think that is appropriate, specifically right now related to the pandemic?
Well, I think anytime you're going to restrict personal liberties, it's got to be pretty extreme case to do it. When the streets of Salt Lake City are burning down, to me, that's an example of, and police officers' lives are in absolute jeopardy. That is an immediate time to react and to take away personal liberties. When it comes to COVID-19, we've been told by President Trump over and over again that millions of people would have died had he not taken the steps that were taken. I think that if you look at the fact that we're just over 100,000 people who have died, that was with the country shut down. Imagine what it would be if the country wasn't shut down. It doesn't take a huge imagination to think about how many more millions of people would have died. There's a time and a place, but I also have a concern because the federal government has this tendency that once they get their hooks in something, into a personal liberty, they don't like to let go. We saw this with the Patriot Act. We hear about contact tracing. Put an app on your phone and the government can know everywhere you've been. During an extreme pandemic, that makes a lot of sense. But if that stays on your phone after the pandemic and they can track where you've been and track your privacy, that doesn't make any sense. And I would fight against that. So to me, this is about good leadership. And I think what everybody there on that stage tonight forgot was that every one of these guidelines that we've been given have come from Republican leadership. They've come from the White House. They've come from the White House experts. They've come from Governor Herbert. These are all programs instituted by members of their party, and they're standing up and saying they don't like it.
Another question?
We had one here.
Yeah, I'd like to know your philosophy of good leadership. To you, what are the hallmarks of a good leader? What does it mean to be a good leader?
Boy, that's a great question. What does it mean to be a good leader? If you look back through our history of this country and you identify those people who we truly consider great, you will find people who did not seek to divide. You will find people who sought to unify. Abraham Lincoln, just at his second inauguration, when the country is still being torn apart, he coined the phrase with malice towards none and charity towards all. Good leaders try and unite. They don't identify our differences and try and use that for power. To me, that's a power grab when people do that. And we're sending more and more people like that to Washington. And that's why I think Washington is being shut down. There is a vacuum of good leadership.
Thank you for your response. A follow-up question to that. There's a lot of individuals at this time with COVID-19 who are concerned about government overreach and the limitation of personal freedoms. You yourself today have expressed twice that you think sometimes it's appropriate to limit personal freedoms. I'm just wondering how you respond to Thomas Jefferson's quote, "I would rather be exposed to the inconveniences attending too much liberty than to those attending too small a degree of it."
I agree with him, but I think that there are extreme cases. I do not think that the Constitution should be a death sentence. I mean, there's got to be a point, wherever it is in your mind. If I say, okay, 1 million will die, people will say, okay, keep my personal liberties. Okay, what about 10 million? People say, okay, keep my personal liberties. What about 30 million? There's a point, I believe, when people are going to finally say, okay, all right, enough is enough. This is a leadership debate about when is enough enough. And we also have to remember that on a local level, our government agencies instill these types of restrictions all the time for the safety of people. What about wearing gloves in a restaurant? Required for them to do, wearing hairnets, washing your hands all the time. These are things that local governments have required. Why? For our own safety. They go in and they rate a restaurant to see if that restaurant is, and they grade it, right? What grade are they getting? You could say these are attacks on personal liberty, but these are times when, as consumers, we don't have the ability to know what's going on behind that kitchen door. And so we don't really know if we're taking our life in our own hands. So to me, that's a time when you say, let's take a look at it. It has to be done within reason, but I believe that there are times when it should be done.